동현이는 손뻑이 기억 안 나?
야 동현아.
이건 뭐야?
이건 뭐야?
손뻑이.
건희쌤 꽃선 기억 안 나? 뭔가 여기 와서 배 타고 이러는 게 제가 낭만이 진짜 없는 사람인데.
맞아요. 준호가 극티거든요.
근데 너무 낭만적이고 너무 좋고 뭔가 괜히 마음이 좀 모르겠어요. 이게 뭔 마음이죠?
약간 벅차오르는.
네, 벅차오르고 좋은 것 같아요. 여수 밤바다 이 조명에 담긴 아름다운 얘기가 있어.
내게 들려주고파 전화를 걸어 뭐 하고 있냐고 나는 지금
근데 진짜 거짓말 아니야.
진짜 이 정도로
맞아요. 제가 진짜 이 정도로 한마디 할게요.
오케이.
제가 와본 여행 중에 제일 알찼던 거.
맞아요.
오늘 진짜 알찼던
약간 좀 저희가 이제 방송 나가는 저희 여행 루트가 있잖아요.
우리 것만 보고만 돼.
진짜 우리 것만 보고 그대로 하시면은
진짜 게임 끝나.
절대 실패하실 수 없어요.
거창하지 않지만 뭔가 소박하게 힐링되는 여행을 원하신다면 꼭 여수 드리핑 편을 참고하시길 바랍니다.
여수로 놀러 오세요.
웨이컴 웨이컴.
걷고 싶어 이 거리를 너와 함께
도시는 세계와 연결되어 문화를 창조했고 새로운 것을 받아들였다.
함께여서 우리는 더 자유롭고 더 멀리 갈 수 있어.
닫힌 문이 아니라 열린 질문으로
나에게 에이펙은
자유,
융합,
국제성,
다양성, 포용,
개발
신라의 정신이 에이펙 2025로 이어집니다.
everyone. Welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. U.S. President Donald Trump says he wants to bring in foreign experts for a period of time to train Americans to build what he called complex products, such as semiconductors, computers, and chips. This comes just days after hundreds of South Korean workers arrested during an immigration raid on a Hyundai plant left the United States. Seoul's top trade negotiator Yo Han-gu will be traveling to Washington for further trade talks, as South Korea and the United States still continue to work over key details of the $350 billion investment fund offered by Seoul in exchange for Washington lowering its reciprocal tariffs. A combined military exercise between South Korea, the U.S., and Japan kicked off today and is set to run until this Friday in waters near Jeju Island. Seoul and Washington also began their separate 5-day tabletop drills at Camp Humphreys in Pyeongtaek. We begin in the United States, where President Donald Trump says he welcomes foreign experts to teach and train Americans how to build high-tech goods after hundreds of South Korean workers were arrested at a Hyundai plant in Georgia. A senior U.S. State Department official also expressed deep regrets over the detention and vowed to prevent similar cases in the future. Our Lee Seung-jae starts us off.
U.S. President Donald Trump is seeking to reassure foreign investors after the mass detention of South Korean workers in Georgia raised fresh concerns about America's credibility as a reliable business partner. In a social media post Sunday, Trump said he does not want to frighten off or disincentivize foreign investment. He stressed that companies building advanced products like semiconductors, chips, and batteries are welcome in the U.S., and that he wants them to bring skilled workers to train Americans. Trump added that U.S. workers would eventually do even better than their counterparts abroad. The comments come just days after 316 South Korean workers were detained during an immigration raid at an electric vehicle battery plant construction site in Bryan County, Georgia. The plant is a joint venture between Hyundai Motor Group and LG Energy Solution. The workers were detained for a week before returning home on Friday. The incident sparked anger in South Korea, prompting diplomatic intervention. On Sunday, U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Landau met with Seoul's first Vice Foreign Minister Park Yoon-ju in Seoul. According to Seoul's foreign ministry, Landau expressed deep regrets over the detention and vowed to prevent similar cases in the future. He conveyed that President Trump is personally following the issue and promised that the detained workers will not face disadvantages if they seek to re-enter the U.S. Landau also proposed working-level talks on visa procedures to better support South Korean firms investing in America. In response, Vice Minister Park raised concerns about the hardships endured by the detained workers and noted the strong sense of shock felt by the South Korean public. Both sides agreed that the incident should be used as an opportunity to strengthen bilateral ties and improve institutional safeguards for workers tied to major investment projects. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
And meanwhile, follow-up negotiations on South Korea's trade deal with the United States are continuing, though key differences remain unresolved. The two sides remain far apart on how to manage and distribute profits from South Korea's promised $350 billion investment fund, while Seoul stresses it will not rush into any deal that undermines its national interest. Our Pyeongyang reports.
Trade talks between South Korea and the U.S. are set to continue as Trade Minister Yo Han-gu leaves for the U.S. on Monday to meet with the United States Trade Representative Jamieson Greer. Industry Minister Kim Jong-un returned home the previous day after follow-up discussions with U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick on the trade agreement reached in July. Under that deal, the U.S. had agreed to cut reciprocal tariffs from 25% to 15% in exchange for Seoul pledging investment worth $350 billion. But follow-up talks have proven difficult. U.S. officials are demanding that Korea increase the share of direct investment, allow Washington to select where the funds are invested, and concede 90% of the profits to the United States. For Seoul, such terms are seen as unfair. The presidential office has reiterated that no hasty decision will be made at the expense of the nation's interest.
The president has previously described Korea's stance as defensive. We are conducting negotiations with the aim of protecting national interests to the fullest.
The presidential office also explained that the negotiations are not aimed at a single fixed goal, but involve both sides presenting new conditions in search of balance, making the talks highly variable. Japan, a key rival in automobiles, struck a deal with Washington in early September, adding pressure on Seoul. Tokyo agreed to invest $550 billion under terms set by the U.S., including project selection and a 90% profit share. In return, tariffs on Japanese cars fall to 15% from September 16th, putting Korean exporters at a disadvantage. With the talks at a standstill, attention now turns to President Lee Jae-myung's upcoming trip to the UN General Assembly in New York later this month, which could provide another opportunity for another summit with President Trump. 변예영, Arirang News.
Starting today, South Korea, the United States, and Japan have begun their 5-day combined military exercise, the Freedom Edge, in international waters near Jeju Island. And at the same time, Seoul and Washington also kicked off their 5-day tabletop drills, the Iron Mace, at Camp Humphreys in Pyeongtaek, which will integrate U.S. nuclear assets with South Korea's conventional forces to deter North Korean threats. It marks the third Iron Mace drill since the Nuclear Consultative Group was launched last year, and the first under Presidents Lee Jae-myung and Donald Trump. North Korea strongly criticized the drills, with Kim Yo-jong, the influential sister of the regime's leader, warning on Sunday that they will bring serious consequences. So the joint military drills between South Korea, the U.S., and Japan, and the tabletop exercises between Seoul and Washington will take place throughout this week. For more on this, we're joined today by Dr. Brian Myers, Professor of International Studies at Dongsa University. Dr. Myers, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
So this joint drill comes after we saw leaders of North Korea, China, and Russia meet in Beijing for China's military parade. What might be behind this week's military exercises?
Well, you know, we knew there was going to be an Iron Mace exercise this year, and we've known since July that Freedom Edge was coming. We didn't know the dates until this month because countries announce the dates of exercises as late as they can. So this stuff was not suddenly conceived as a response to what we saw in Beijing, but I think America is happy to frame things that way. Now, the greater motivation behind the trilateral exercises is to contain and deter the so-called autocratic alliance between Russia, China, and North Korea, while Iron Mace is a bilateral American-Korean drill that's meant to protect South Korea better against the North Korean threat specifically. So the motivation behind these two exercises is a little bit different.
I see. And North Korea's Kim Yo-jong also said the exercises could lead to serious consequences. How likely do you think it is that the North might respond to these drills with something like a missile launch?
Well, let's put it this way. If a big ICBM launch has been planned anyway, then the regime may frame it as a response to Freedom Edge and Iron Mace. But the usual North Korean response to exercises like this is to fire a salvo of short-range ballistic missiles either toward the West Sea or the East Sea. In other words, pretty small-scale stuff. Now, we may see that kind of activity this week, but I don't think the regime is going to rush the launch of a really expensive and significant missile just to make a show of defiance.
Right, and last week, Kim Jong-un oversaw a test of their new missile engine that could be used in their latest ICBM, the Hwasong-20. How would you assess North Korea's nuclear capabilities at this point?
Well, even if that new engine works fine when the Hwasong-20 is tested, it's basically an evolution from the earlier ICBM. So it's not a revolutionary jump. It's just another headache for Washington because it means North Korea would be able to strike anywhere in American territory even more capably. Now, when it comes to what the country can do on the nuclear front, the experts say that there are still weaknesses there. in the command and control infrastructure. They point to questions surrounding re-entry vehicles. In other words, can these warheads really survive re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere? But we can be pretty sure the North has at least 50 warheads, maybe as many as 90 or 100. It has a wide range of delivery systems. So while North Korea is not in Russia's league by any means, it's a serious nuclear power, whether we like it or not.
Right. And U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Landau was here in Seoul over the weekend. How do you see the timing of his visit, and what do you think it could mean?
Well, I think the main goal of this visit was to assuage South Koreans' anger over the ICE raid in Georgia, which you just talked about here on Arirang. And I think the Americans also want to calm the South Koreans down about what people here consider to be unreasonable American demands in regard to trade. Now, Landau expressed regret over what happened in Georgia. I don't think the MAGA base in America is going to like that expression of regret. But in Korean political culture, I think that apologies often result in demands for more apologies. They often have the opposite effect to the one intended. But in any case, this alliance between America and South Korea is in worse shape than at any time I can remember in the past 20 years. I mean, even conservatives here are angry and complaining about how America has been treating this country. So while these military exercises may go off without a hitch, I think it's going to take more than a deputy Secretary of State to patch things up.
I see. I guess we'll have to see if the bilateral relations do improve in the near future. All right, Professor Meyer, thank you so much for your insight. As always, we appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
The South Korean government has decided to maintain the current threshold for capital gains tax on stock holdings. At a meeting with the ruling Democratic Party on Monday, Finance Minister Koo Yoon-chul said the threshold will remain at 5 billion won, or around $3.6 million, citing the public's call to revitalize the capital market. In July, the government proposed lowering the threshold to 1 billion won, or just under $720,000, a move that sparked strong backlash from retail investors. Gyeongbokgung Palace here in Seoul has begun its fall night tours this month, giving visitors a chance to enjoy the crisp autumn air and the palace illuminated after sunset. Our culture correspondent Park Gon-woo was there.
When the sun sets and darkness falls, time travel to the Joseon Dynasty begins. Limited guests, including many foreigners, line up for this special night adventure. From babies in strollers to older people with cameras, visitors of all ages show delight on their faces. Many slip into hanbok, immersing themselves in the royal nightscape.
The first time for me in this dress, beautiful, absolutely amazing because of these lights and you know, the atmosphere. This great to come here during the day, but of course this night is absolutely special.
The Gyeongwae-do Pavilion, once a royal banqueting hall, is the place that many photo takers look forward to the most, as the ripples spreading softly around the pond attract much attention. Visitors are flocking to Gyeongwae-do Pavilion, the highlight of this night tour, all trying to capture the pavilion's reflection in the pond. Only 3,000 visitors are admitted each night, with 300 extra tickets for foreigners. And if you're in hanbok, you can enjoy all of this for free, a true highlight of the night. It truly served as a perfect photo spot, keeping visitors strolling around it until closing hours. Another spotlight was a performance by the Korean Traditional Music Orchestra of the Blind, an ensemble whose history even traces back to King Sejong. Their emotional lyrics and lively rhythms deeply moved the audience.
I'm so proud to show my family traditional Korean music. The weather's also just perfect to enjoy it.
I know a little bit of the language, but not totally what they're talking about. But watching, I almost started to get some teary-eyed. Even though they're blind, I'm sure they have like other superpowers, just like singing.
With more foreigners visiting during the night, officials say the surge is clear.
Interest is surging, fueled by K-pop and recently K-pop demon hunters. More foreigners, especially the younger generation, wish to experience traditional Korean architecture themselves. Around 1/3 of visitors are from overseas, from even Europe and Africa.
She said that thanks to those visitors, last year 6.4 million people visited the palace, and already this year, over 4.2 million have come. Expectations are for the figure to reach at least 7 million this year, the most ever. And you'll be able to add to that as the special night tour under the glowing moonlight continues until September 28th. 박건우, Arirang News.
Shifting gears, if you're thinking about redecorating for the new season, there's a fair here in Seoul you won't want to miss. Our Park Hyo-bin takes us inside the Magok Living Design Fair.
A fresh burst of creativity is filling the capital this week, drawing crowds eager to discover how design shapes modern living. South Korea's largest living and lifestyle show, the Magok Living Design Fair, has kicked off at the COEX Magok in Western Seoul. On an autumn day, visitors flock to explore furniture, decor, and smart home ideas right in time for the moving and wedding seasons.
I found this event very nice, actually. My partner brought me here because she's working in design, and yeah, I find everything amazing, actually. I never thought it was going to be that big. It's very nice.
This year's theme, The Absent House, A Certain House, asks what kind of home we truly need. Some 140 brands are presenting fresh concepts across 8 themed zones, where function meets unique material and technology meets emotion. There are modular tables that can be assembled in different ways, along with furniture that you could paint in your own colors, reflecting South Korea's growing one-person living trend. Sustainable pieces also stood out, from eco-friendly interiors to artful designs crafted with recycled plastic.
The bottle caps are first collected by NGOs and other non-profit groups, then sorted by senior citizens. We crush and reuse them, so about 2,000 caps go directly into each piece of furniture. This process greatly reduces carbon emissions, and the items can be recycled multiple times.
A key highlight is that online furniture and decor are gathered in one place, inviting visitors to experience them firsthand. Moreover, a special gallery, the 6th Hue, allows visitors to wander through 6 colorful rooms, reimagining space through the language of color. Workshops with emerging artists have turned the venue into more than a showroom, a place where guests can create decor items and share the joy of making.
The fair runs until this Sunday, showcasing the latest design trends that shape our lives. Park Hyo-bin, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Choi Ji-hee, and this is The World Now. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio arrived in Israel on Sunday and met with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to discuss the war in Gaza and last week's Israeli airstrike in Qatar. Upon arrival on Sunday morning, Rubio and Netanyahu visited the Western Wall in Jerusalem's Old City, accompanied by the U.S. Ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee. The two said through a joint prayer ceremony that their alliance remains as strong and durable as the stones of the Western Wall. Though Rubio criticized the recent Israeli strike in Qatar, saying the United States was not happy, he emphasized that it will not change the nature of the U.S.-Israel relationship. Plans for Gaza and securing the return of hostages are to be discussed. Rubio will then join President Trump on his planned visit to Britain next week. Romania has condemned a Russian drone incursion described as the second violation of NATO airspace within a week. The Romanian Defense Ministry confirmed on Saturday that its air defenses had tracked a Russian-made drone for almost an hour as it entered its airspace in the southeastern county of Tulcha. Detected near the Ukrainian border, the drone flew low and stayed in Romanian airspace for about 50 minutes before exiting near the village of Kilia-Veche, dropping off radar about 20 kilometers southwest of that point. Romania scrambled fighter jets and enlisted the support of Eurofighter jets from its NATO allies. However, the drone was not shot down as it was not considered an immediate threat. The incident comes days after Poland shot down Russian drones that had violated its airspace, prompting NATO allies to pledge to strengthen the defenses. Iran's Supreme National Security Council on Sunday approved the agreement between Iran and the International Atomic Energy Agency to resume inspections of nuclear facilities. The council reviewed and approved the agreement recently concluded between Iran's foreign minister and the IAEA Director General in Cairo, Egypt on September 9th. Following attacks on its nuclear facilities by Israel and the United States in June, Iran had restricted IAEA inspectors from visiting these sites. However, under the new deal, Iran is required to report on nuclear material at the affected sites and permit IAEA access to all nuclear installations. Iran said the agreement can be terminated if any hostile action occurs against Iran or its nuclear facilities. In the UK, former world boxing champion Ricky the Hitman Hatton has died at the age of 46. His body was discovered early on Sunday morning at his home in Greater Manchester. Police said his death is not being treated as suspicious. Hatton's boxing career spanned from 1997 to 2012, winning titles in both the light welterweight and welterweight divisions. He earned 45 wins in 48 professional fights. Following his retirement, Hatton struggled with mental health, alcoholism, and addiction. After his death, tributes poured in, with the World Boxing Association saying he was a true champion and a legend of the sport.
We're already heading into mid-September, and if you're in the upper regions, you'll need some protection items, but keep an umbrella handy for those in the south coast and Jeju. Regions of the Jeollado provinces and Jeju Island could see up to 60 millimeters of rainfall. Gyeongsangnam-do province might get 5 to 40 millimeters through this evening. And this afternoon will be hotter than yesterday, with daytime highs climbing above 30 degrees Celsius in most regions. And following Jeju Island, heat wave advisories are now in place for Busan and some of the other southern regions. For a closer look, Daegu, Gyeongju, Busan, Jeju will be all topping out at 31 degrees Celsius. Seoul, Daejeon topping out at 30 degrees. Now, those traveling up north or to the south need to be aware of the weather and have a dual-purpose umbrella ready for heavy sun and rain today. Most of the country is forecast to see passing rain tomorrow. That nationwide rain is in the forecast for Wednesday. Once the rain clears, temperatures will fall, ushering in cool and refreshing autumn weather to the country.
Now that's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.
country where traditional and modern cultures coexist.
Where you can explore spectacular landscapes and nature.
Savor the delights of traveling at every turn.
Where? Korea, of course.
There are some must-visit places in Korea. Ones that appear in every tour guidebook: Hangang River, Gyeongbokgung Palace from the Joseon Dynasty, and...
Yes, these are essentials, but I want to go somewhere a little different. I don't have to follow the guidebook. For example, filming locations for K-pop music videos or K-dramas and movies.
Traveling is all about taking it slow. A long walk at your own pace, or even zoning out somewhere quiet. Doesn't it sound relaxing?
You travel for the experience, trying something new in a foreign place, de-stressing and making lifetime memories, taking tons of pictures along the way.
70% of the Korean territory is mountainous. Naturally, hiking is a very popular pastime in Korea. Not your kind of activity? Trust me, the view will make the effort worth it. Just catch your breath by the cold stream in the valley.
Korea is surrounded by the sea on three sides. From the beach, you can enjoy a wide open view as well as various water activities. But the riverside is great too. There's plenty to see and do.
If you're in Korea, you can't miss the night view full of dazzling lights.
Yes, even the same place can have a totally different vibe at night.
Want to make unforgettable memories?
How about traveling to all corners of Korea? Join us next time to explore more about Korean culture.
We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bringing news just for you. It's Monday, September 15th here in Seoul. I'm Lee Soo-jin, and this is News Generation. Joining us today is Niall. Good morning. To have you, also Brooks with us.
Hello, happy Monday.
Happy Monday. And both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. So it's Monday, which means we're kicking off another work week, and it feels less daunting because the weather has been really nice lately. You can really feel that autumn has finally arrived, and it's definitely a welcome change after the sweltering heat of the summer. So to get things started, I want to ask both Niall and Brooke. So starting with you, Niall, how did you spend your summer this year?
You know what? I actually had a very busy summer, and as a freelancer, that's something to be thankful for. I've actually started driving for the first time this year, but with all the weather changes, that means that there were some pretty scary moments due to very heavy rain. I usually come out of my house at around 4:30 a.m. and I've seen some car accidents this year during the pretty crazy rainy season, and I've seen some cars hit each other in slow motion. It was scary, and I know there's been a lot of damage done due to heavy rain, but ironically also a very intense drought in Gangneung.
So we're going to talk more about the drought later, and also this year is actually also my first year driving, and for me it was so scary to not be able to see the road in front of me.
Kind of a difficult year to start driving, I would say.
Good point. What about you, Brooke?
Well, as anyone who knows me is very well aware, I am extremely sensitive to the heat, so I tried to spend as much time indoors as possible this summer. But one thing was able to get me out of my house, and that was League of Legends. I actually went to a pop-up with my best friend Brittany, who will be joining us later, and it was so hot. The theme was actually hot springs, and it lived up to that theme. It was a whopping 38 degrees outside. You can see how intense that sunlight was. People had their umbrellas, their parasols, trying to fight off the heat. There have only been 9 days in Seoul's history that it has reached over 38 degrees Celsius, and that's over 100 degrees Fahrenheit for any American viewers out there. It was a suffocating kind of heat. It was more than just uncomfortable. It actually felt a little bit dangerous. I was worried for us, for the other people at the event, for all the staff that had to be working outside. And unfortunately, that was just one of many days like that this summer. I can remember getting so many alerts this year, related to the heat and other weather-related disasters. There have been many heat-related illnesses and deaths that I've heard about in the headlines. So yeah, it just felt like this summer was a lot hotter, a lot more intense, and needless to say, I'm very much looking forward to the weather getting a bit colder.
So like you said, Brooke, there were unfortunately a series of weather-related disasters this summer. So let's take a look at the screen to learn more.
Summer is usually the season when many people go on vacation. Students get a break from school, parents take time off, and with the heat, a lot of families head to the beaches. But this year, the weather brought more than just sunshine. It also brought a series of weather-related disasters. One place that was hit especially hard was the city of Gangneung. Today on News Generation, we explore why these disasters seem to be happening more often and how communities can better prepare for the future.
So as we just saw in the video, there were a number of weather-related disasters this summer, namely the drought, one of South Korea's most sought-after summer attractions. And while it's always nice to enjoy our summer break, it's equally, if not more, important to take a moment to reflect on the risks and challenges these events bring. For example, recently we saw this major disaster strike the city of Gyeongbokgung in Gyeonggi province. Were you following what happened there, Niall?
Yeah, absolutely. It was really devastating to see. Gangneung, Gangwon province is facing the worst drought on record. Obong Reservoir, which supplies 87% of the city's household water, dropped as low as 11% capacity below the 15% minimum threshold. The average is around 71% each year, but thankfully the rain this weekend helped to go just above the minimum at over the 15% mark. But the Korean government has declared a disaster state in Gangneung, the first ever for a natural disaster caused by drought. There were other government mobilizations like Gangneung Drought Response Field Support Group, and it was formed after the disaster declaration on August 30th and is operating from Gangneung City Hall. Fire agency also issued a National Fire Service mobilization order. Fire engines have been deployed to deliver water. Coast Guard also came in with Dokdo patrol ship Sambongho 5001 to supply household water to fire trucks at the Anin Port Power Plant Pier. Defense Ministry also deployed troops and water tank vehicles to pump water from nearby rivers into the Obong Reservoir.
And as of 7 a.m. today, the water level at the Obong Reservoir that Niall mentioned, which supplies most of Gangnam's drinking water as well as water for agriculture, rose to 16.3%, up 0.6 percentage points from the previous day. And it's the third straight day of gains thanks to Saturday's rainfall. And while rain is still in the forecast this week, officials warn it's still far from enough to ease the drought, as the average water level for this time of year, as Niall mentioned, is around 71%. The city says it will continue to, as such, to enforce water restrictions and emergency supply measures. But unfortunately, it wasn't just the city of Gangneung that faced a natural disaster, right, Brooke? It really felt like this summer was marked by an unusually high number of disasters across the country. Basically, we saw everything from floods to wildfires and heat waves. So did you also feel like this summer in particular stood out for the number and intensity of these events?
Definitely. I mentioned earlier that I was outside during one of the hottest days on record in Seoul, but that wasn't just a one-off. That was one of 28 different heat wave days. That's an entire month of extreme heat that we had to go through here in Korea. In fact, according to the Korea Meteorological Administration, South Korea actually endured its hottest summer since records began in 1973, with the national average temperature from June through August reaching 25.7 degrees Celsius. And this actually marked a second year in a row of record-breaking heat. So it's not just all in our heads and feeling like it's hot. The numbers back it up too. Along with this heat came localized and heavy rainfall, as you're seeing on the screen now. But at the same time, in Gangwon, like we've been talking about, the summer precipitation was only 34% of the normal range, and that resulted in the drought that Niall covered earlier. So in short, it's really run the gamut from extreme heat to drought to really heavy rainfall. The world has just experienced a lot of chaotic weather events, and so I'm glad we're talking about it today, because I do think that it's something we need to address, as this trend looks like it's going to continue in the future unless we do.
Now, so besides the disasters we've already mentioned, were there any other events this summer that were unusual or unprecedented, things we haven't seen before that you think we should be paying closer attention to?
Right. I want to actually highlight this thing called flash drought, going deeper into the concept of drought. Normal droughts take months or even years to develop, and flash droughts, on the other hand, dry out the ground within about 2 weeks. Wow. And the main cause is the extreme heat, and it rapidly evaporates the soil moisture. Flash drought frequency has steadily increased over the last 40 years, and not just in Korea, but all across East Asia. And it's really difficult to predict them because it requires combining rainfall data with 2 to 3 week heat wave forecasts and soil moisture models. And the problem with these flash droughts is that it makes the preparation and the response difficult for farmers, cities, and governments. And climate models project that they will keep getting stronger and more frequent, so risks will continue to grow as heat waves intensify with global warming.
So without a doubt, the way the climate crisis is contributing to natural disasters is deeply concerning. And contrary to what some skeptics might believe, I feel like it's actually millennials and Gen Zs who are not only the most aware of these issues, but also the ones actively trying to make changes in their daily lives. Brooke, do you think that's really the case? Are younger generations stepping up when it comes to climate action?
I think younger generations are definitely more aware of it. They're more worried about it. And just to put some numbers on it, a global consulting firm found that roughly 6 in 10 Gen Zs and millennials had felt anxious about the environment in the past month, and over 70% said that they were actively trying to minimize their environmental impact, which is a very significant number. Many also said that they researched their employers' environmental policies, with some even leaving their jobs if they disagreed with their stance on climate change, and others planning to do the same. Meanwhile, another global study found that many young people are experiencing extreme worry and fear about the future due to environmental concerns, and it's to the point that it's actually interfering with their daily lives. Clinicians call this climate anxiety, and it's different from simply generalized anxiety because they say that it is about distress regarding a real threat like climate change. And so this just goes to show that young people these days are extremely concerned about the environment, much more so than I can remember back when I was younger. It's much more prevalent, and I think it's really driving people to push for that change.
Right, I agree. What are your thoughts on this, Niall?
Yeah, I do think in some ways that it's sad that they have to focus so much on this, but I think it's also very noble of them that they get together, raise their voices, make things known. And specifically, there was a team that stood out to me. In Inha University, students called Piroso are communicating to younger generation about climate change. And I thought this was really clever because it's a play on the Korean word pi, which is rain, and piroso, which means finally. There's your Korean lesson of the day. They actually are coming together to state the importance of talking about climate change and addressing this issue in the language of millennials and Gen Z. They have been creatively addressing climate crisis by using Instagram reels and card news and board games to share relatable messages without heavy jargon. It's very approachable, and they this approach blends play, education, and policy awareness, proving that small peer-driven actions can actually spark real change in how young people engage with climate issues.
I think it's great that young people are getting together and doing this kind of as a collective action as well. So to find out more, we're going to talk to a young person from a different country to hear how their generation is experiencing the climate crisis and what actions they're taking to respond. That conversation will take place right after the break, so don't go anywhere.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search out channel Arirang News. Click Posts and cast your vote in the poll. Make a new type of news with us.
We're joined today by Brittany, a young person from the U.S. So hi, Brittany. Thank you so much for connecting with us today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So how was summer in the U.S. this year? Did you experience any effects of the climate change?
Yes, the summer has been absolutely brutal. Yeah, I grew up in Arizona, and now I live somewhere that is a lot more humid. And it's just, the humidity was absolutely oppressive this year. It was, as Brooke mentioned earlier, it's been absolutely suffocating. I'm used to more of a dry heat. So when you step outside and you're just immediately damp from the humidity and you're just automatically sweating, it's not something that I'm used to. I feel like I can't breathe well outside and I'm just so overwhelmed by the heat. I spent almost the entirety of the summer indoors. I did not go outside unless I had to. So it's been a very isolating summer, I feel.
Yeah, that's really sad to hear, and it's just we're experiencing it firsthand, and we see here in Korea younger people being really interested in this issue to talk about climate change. And I want to ask, even in the United States, with Gen Zs and millennials specifically, are there huge interests in environmental issues, and what are they doing about it?
Yes, I feel like we are definitely interested in it. We grew up learning about climate change in school, and now I feel like we're finally seeing the effects of it. And it's kind of like, it's always been kind of like an abstract idea up until now, and now it's kind of like, oh no.
It's real.
It's real. So of course, you know, individuals try to make changes and stuff, but it's kind of become a part of our identity almost as Gen Z and millennials to, you know, focus more on the environment and trying to create a better world. But then on the other side, I feel like a lot of people have almost given up. Like a lot of people are using it as a reason to not have kids or not look forward to the future because they just don't see it getting any better.
Yeah, very good points, and I'm so happy to have you with us today. My last question for you is, when it comes to the climate crisis, what do you think are the most important things for us to remember?
I think the most important things for us to remember is, as individuals, there's only so much we can do. And I think it really falls on the governments and corporations to actually take the big step forward in helping our planet, because, you know, us turning off our AC or, you know, walking to work instead of taking a taxi isn't going to make the biggest difference. And it's just going to make it harder on us when it doesn't make the most difference as, you know, big corporations could make.
I agree. Why it's important for us to take the small steps by doing what you just mentioned. It's really important for policymakers to also kind of do it with us to actually make a change. So
right.
Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
So we just heard from a young person from the U.S. sharing her perspective on the climate crisis. What really stands out is how Gen Zs around the world are coming up with their own creative ways to respond, whether through lifestyle changes or social media activism. And that brings us to a bigger point. We often hear that millennials and Gen Zs approach climate issues quite differently from older generations. So from what you've seen, Brooke, how are young people putting their values into practice?
Well, I mentioned earlier about how young people are, in general, more anxious about climate change and environmental issues, and that is pushing them to act. And as we've often covered on NewsGen, we call the millennials and Gen Z generation the eco generation. And I think that's a fair title. It's because we tend to be critical of things like fast fashion, for example. And a lot of people have largely shifted to secondhand shopping, as shown by Korea's resale market expanding fast. It's actually expected to double its market share by 2025, which is great news. And young people also have been embracing plant-based eating these days, with the vegan and vegetarian population reaching over 2.6 million in 2024, and that's up about 73% since 2008. They also practice hands-on eco habits like plogging. I don't know if you've heard of plogging before, but it's like picking up litter while you're jogging or walking or biking. They also participate in things like zero-waste shopping at refill and low-waste stores. They go to the beach and do beach combing and cleanups. I think, like we've been talking about, it can feel like it's like a drop in the ocean when you're doing these things, but it gives us some sort of sense of control over what's happening, over what seems like an uncontrollable situation. So I definitely encourage people to keep doing things like that. And we also are seeing, you know, students and youth climate organizers and even K-pop collectives as well have been using online platforms to push for even bigger changes. We're talking about systemic changes, not just individual, to advocate for the policymakers to also put in their efforts as well. And I think that's, you know, the only way that we can make this happen. I think young people are really addressing environmental issues kind of in their own way, in their own style.
I guess this is where anxiety isn't totally bad.
Right, right. It's leading to, you know, action.
So beyond activism and lifestyle changes, the younger generations are also reshaping the way they consume. So Niall, how are Gen Zs and millennials making different choices as consumers when it comes to climate change and sustainability?
Right. We were talking about how earlier that the government does have to move in order to make systematic changes, but we have power as consumers where we spend money, what companies to do, what they are doing with the products, and MZ consumers are driving a rise in value-based spending, prioritizing social and environmental impact over pure product quality, and they're buying donation-linked products to go to good causes to save the planet. Vegan and animal welfare choices also play a huge part in their consumption habits. And I wanted to, another Korean lesson for the day is 돈줄. It comes from the original 혼줄 내주다. They actually want to support sometimes business owners and even big companies that are doing good things, because original 혼줄 means you give them a good scolding, a punishment. So combining 돈, money, and 혼줄, you want to punish them with so much money. It's a sarcastic twist to it, but we want to support the businesses that are preparing the way for a brighter future for millennials and Gen Z and so forth.
So it seems that Gen Zs and millennials are really leading the way when it comes to climate awareness and sustainable living. So what about the two of you? Brooke, do you feel this climate anxiety in your daily life, and how do you try to look after the environment in your own way?
I am worried about it. I think it's because, like Brittany mentioned, the heat feels suffocating, and I feel like a summer isn't supposed to feel like you can't breathe when you go outside. You know, it shouldn't be that hot. And so I feel it when things happen that haven't happened before. For example, this summer I've gone to indoor spaces like PC Bangs, for example, and the AC actually can't keep up. It was so hot outside that it started just blowing lukewarm air several times. Even in my own home, my AC has actually caused my electricity to cut off when I try to put it up too high or I try to put the temperature too low, because it just can't keep up. And I feel like that's a good analogy for the world in general. We can't keep up with the changes that are happening. So I do feel it, especially as someone with asthma and other medical issues, and I worry for other vulnerable groups that are outside during these harsh conditions. I also have nieces and nephews that are coming into the world, and I don't want them to inherit a planet that is so difficult to live in. So I truly hope we can do something about it. Personally, I try to recycle, you know, reduce my food waste, turn off my electronics, and it might feel a little hopeless, but I think if we all keep contributing and keep advocating for those big picture changes to happen, I hope that we can do something to change this trajectory.
I mean, it sounds like you're already doing a lot, but you mentioned earlier plugging or interesting activities like that. Is there anything that you were kind of interested in doing as well?
I would like to try plugging just because the name is so fun.
It's
very fun to say. And I do a lot of walking because I commute. I don't have a car. I take public transportation or I walk. So I feel like that's something easy that I could do to help the environment.
I see. What about you now?
I don't think I will like plogging because I'm very bad at jogging, but maybe plocking. So I walk and yeah.
Plocking?
So
we'll do some plocking.
Yeah, some plocking. That'll be a new thing. But you know, we feel the climate change on our skins as we were talking about, and I do worry about the future as well. But I try not to be so depressed about it if there's something that I can't do immediately, and do my best in the things that I can do. We talked about value consumption earlier, and Brooke also mentioned vintage clothing has been becoming very popular, secondhand stores and many shops opening up here and there. And I want to say that I also, these clothes that I'm wearing today to fit the theme is actually for the environment. It's all secondhand. And beautiful. I love going thrifting, and it's a little joy in my life. And I was very inspired by actress Jamila Jamil, who said that when she buys clothes, she buys things she can wear until she's 80. So they're classics. And
great advice.
Whether it's new or vintage, something sustainable, and that there are enough clothes out there to clothe a few generations without producing more. Just go see in the mall. Yes, that's enough for the entire city for a little while. And yeah, so we just got to make some little changes in our consumption and our daily habits, and hope that big organizations and governments do step in.
And when it comes to the climate crisis, what do you think are some practical ways we can address it, Brooke?
Well, it's a huge question, isn't it? And it's just a very complex problem. I don't have all the answers. I'm not sure anyone does, but I think it's just going to take concerted efforts on both an individual level and, of course, you know, a systemic level to make a big change. In our everyday lives, we can keep, you know, putting into practice the 3 R's that everyone always talks about, the reduce, reuse, recycle. I think it's important to remember. It's just like voting. When you think, oh, my vote doesn't matter, it does when it's a collective voice, collective action. So keep doing those small things and keep advocating for the policymakers to make changes as well. We need to protect our forests and our oceans and advocate for changing to renewable energy. All of those things are important, and that will hopefully help our planet moving forward.
And what about you now?
Yeah, I actually mentioned flash droughts earlier and how difficult it is for people to prepare for that. But I think in that way, it's so important to do what we can to prepare for these droughts that will be coming, because it's quite drastic and will become more frequent. And the government needs to establish a system of quick response and for more people to be aware of what these are. And in our personal lives, continue to practice sustainability.
Like you said, there's so many things we can do in our personal lives, and I think I'll be asking you which vintage store you shop at.
Yeah, me too.
After the show.
All in Ilsan, guys. There's many. It's spreading even beyond Seoul, which is so great.
So we've seen that climate crisis isn't just a global issue. It's personal. It affects every generation in different ways, from lifestyle choices to social activism. It's clear that young people are leading the way in finding creative solutions, and each of us has a role to play, whether through small everyday actions or larger community and policy efforts. And by staying informed, staying engaged, and supporting sustainable choices, we can all contribute to a healthier planet for the future. And this brings us to the end of today's episode of News Generation, but News Gen will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time. Big thanks to Niall.
No problem.
And Brooke.
Always a pleasure.
And to all our viewers, thank you so much for watching, and we hope you have the best day. We are News Generation.
That all the meals here serve as a foundation of its practices. The process of making a meal requires deep interconnectedness. And being thankful for the effort is the first step forward. Tastes rendered by time, scented by nature, temple food is made with the wisdom of its practitioners, and it's a peaceful meal to fill your heart. Gratitude is the core of the practice. The refrain from the 5 pungent ingredients supports mental clarity and mindfulness. Refraining from taking the life of any living being, practicing to cherish